Good evening. Welcome to Paranormal Lens episode number 16. We're looking at the Haunted Hinsdale House this week because JOTT-NYX, some of the members of JOTT-NYX are going to go explore that this coming weekend. I'm here tonight. I'm Chad Thomas, as usual. I'm here tonight with Jamie Widener and David Detromiti, and we're going to talk about the Hinsdale House. So how you guys been?
Good. Yeah. How's a week go by already?
Good.
Time flies. So, and David, we're glad to see you with us again for tonight. Always nice to see you here. So, anything else to share before we jump into?
Yeah, I'll be a part-time contributor. Nope, I'll be a part-time contributor here and there to the show. You guys have done a fantastic job.
Well, we appreciate that. So
wouldn't be here without you too. So
well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the history of the Hinsdale House and just get some things started here. Let's see. The Hinsdale House is located on a hilltop at 3830 McMahon Road in Hinsdale, New York, and it has been the center of discussion in the paranormal world for about the past 50 years, dating back to the early 1970s. As with many of these places, the line between truth and fiction gets a little blurry. I found an article written by Cassidy Nicholas that explored some of those misconceptions, which I'll discuss a little bit later. Much of my research came from this article, a book by Daniel Kloss called Hinsdale House, An American Haunting, and a book by Clara Miller, who was a resident of the house for a while, called Echoes of a Haunting. As is the case when researching many of these paranormal topics, I found the articles contradicted each other. What I'm presenting tonight is what seems to make sense to me. I mean, no disrespect to anyone who has done research and believes something differently. I'm hoping to meet Daniel this weekend and have a good discussion with him when we travel to the Hinsdale House and see what he has to say. I also condensed much of what I found in to fit our format tonight. So looking at the origins of the property, you have to go back to the Native Americans, as we typically do with a lot of our things. The area was populated by the Seneca tribe, which was part of the Iroquois Nation. The Senecas were the largest tribe of the original 5 nations. They were represented by the 8 chiefs. The Seneca were not nomadic. They built long houses that were permanent structures. The women of the tribe were responsible for cultivating maize and vegetables. The men were responsible for hunting in the fall and fishing in the spring. Now, one of the stories you'll hear a lot about the Hinsdale House is Native American burial grounds on the property. There are several burial mounds in the area, and I believe there is not one on the property. The Native Americans would have used the hill as a lookout point, but the practicality of using it as a settlement or a burial ground has been proven wrong many times. The article that I found by Nicholas traced the property's ownership back to 1813. A gentleman named Willick Wood settled on 100 acres of land in Township 3, Range 3. By 1830, Wood owned about 250 acres on which he ran a successful farm and tannery business. The house that he built on the property was located south of the current set of buildings, but is no longer in existence. In 1850, Wood sold the property to David and Charles Everett. They purchased the land on top of the hill, including the original house. It is believed that Charles moved into the house that was on the property, and David built a new house that we know today as the Haunted Hinsdale House. In 1858, the Everetts sold the property to Alfred Burton so they could move west to Iowa. In 1861, there is record of George and Elizabeth Burton selling the property to Michael McMahon, a newly immigrated Irishman. It is believed that several generations of the McMahon family lived in the house until the late 1960s. It was at this time that Donna M. Reese, a realty tycoon, purchased the property. The years between 1861 and 1970 seem to have some of those blurry lines I talked about earlier. There are stories of the house being used as a stagecoach stop and inn. This inn went by the name of the Hinsdale House. It was tied to stories of theft, rape, and murder. The Haunted Hinsdale House that we're discussing tonight was not the same house. Though a stagecoach stop traveled the main road. Now, would have been on that road, not a farm lane. With so many family names being the same in the area, it is understandable that confusion happens, and I'm glad that Nicholas spent so much time researching and doing deed searches and exams to find the inaccuracies and trying to correct them. In the early 1970s, a family moved into the current house on the hill, Clara and Phil Dandy. The Dandy family lived in Buffalo, New York. In 1967, they started this vacation in the nearby Allegheny State Park. Clara noticed that the family enjoyed being in nature, and they purchased a small cabin retreat in Cuba, New York. Wanting to make it more of a permanent place to live, the family began looking for a home that they could live in year-round. Having already dealt with Reese when renting and purchasing the other cabins, she suggested a homestead on the hilltop outside of Hinsdale. The property boasted a house and a recently dug pond. The house needed a lot of work, and it was not exactly what the family was used to. Oh, sorry, there's the works I've cited earlier, and here's Clara's description. And she described this in her book, Echoes of a Haunting. The single-story half of the house contained a country-style kitchen, a utility room, and a bedroom. The lower story of the other side boasted the living room, a bedroom, the bath. The upstairs had one good-sized bedroom, a small bedroom, and a closet masquerading as a bedroom. Facing the dangerously steep steps as one descended was the door to a crawl space, a feature of the house with I was not familiar, having always lived in houses with attics. The awkward crawl space was not my idea of a storage space. It had a peaked roof and was almost inaccessible. When the door was opened, hot, dusty air rushed out. Looking in, one could see the neat brick chimney along the angled rafters. Another feature of the house that offended my city sensibilities was the root cellar. Now I have lived in houses containing cellars all my life, but the root cellar was something else again. The only entrance was through a rather narrow door set in the bathroom, of all places, about a foot from the toilet. One could find it difficult to find a more awkward location. Descending the rickety stairs and coming to the dirt floor made my flesh crawl. The side walls were rough-hewn stone. There was only a small area where the ceiling was high enough to allow one to stand. And that ends her quote. The Dandys were a family of 6. Phil and Claire were the parents, and they had 4 children who were Mike, Beth, Laura, and Mary. When the family started moving things into their new home using the family station wagon, they started having unusual car problems. The car, which had not had any issues, started to overheat, but only when near the house. Now, in my mind, automatically goes to hauling heavy loads up a hill while moving could cause this issue. But that's the skeptic in me, so, I'm not sure where that would go. But it would only, the only time it would be happening was when they were near the house. But this was not the only time that cars would have problems. On July 18th, 1970, the family made their move to the house full-time. Unfortunately, when Claire and the family arrived, they found that the home had been occupied by a large swarm of bees. Her brother, who had arrived before her, said that he had to push his way through a wall of bees to get in the house to call an exterminator. Now, it is noted in her book that they never had seen bees in the house before. The exterminator sprayed and killed many bees, but they still had issues for months, including at one point honey dripping from the rafters. A local bee expert said that this was very unusual and could not give an explanation, especially at that time of year. It lasted for a few months until the hive headed for a better place to live. The family had many pets and animals on the property. These included dogs, a raccoon, 4 guinea pigs, 2 parakeets, 2 finches, and a woodchuck called Nipper. They also received a kitten named Fluffy to help keep mice out of the house. The dogs started to bring home large bones that could not be identified. Not thinking about it, the bones were tossed in the garbage. Living in a wooded area, they could have been anything. Claire also states in her book that she wished that she had kept them for testing. One day, Claire returned home from work to find the children distraught. They said that someone had been in the house. Upon investigating, she found that all the girls' clothes had been gone through and tossed about. Mary's record player had been thrown across the room and had hit the wall. The most protective dog that was normally inside and comfortable in the house was outside for no reason. Shortly after this, Clara gave up her job in Buffalo and became a full-time homemaker. During the winter of 1970, strange things started to happen to the pets. One dog completely disappeared without a trace, and one of the cats climbed into the dryer and mysteriously died. The winter was also the coldest on record. In February of 1971, the pipes froze and wouldn't thaw out again until April. Water had to be carried in from the old well outside and heated before being used. It was one night while carrying water that the family saw a large lighted object in the sky. It made no sound, but moved quickly through the sky. The children saw these flying objects in the sky several times. In the summer of 1971, something in the sky hovered over the house. Claire was woken up by a bright light that flooded her room, and Michael called from downstairs that something was lighting up his room as well. This lasted for 10 minutes until it just disappeared. When it was gone, they looked out the window and saw the same object that had been in the sky during the winter flying away. The family started having strange accidents. They ranged from falling off bicycles to cutting their hands, breaking bones, to multiple car accidents. The things that were happening too often and didn't seem coincidental. They also started having pets pass away from unknown causes. At one point, 3 pets died in Mary's room within a 2-month period without any apparent cause. Things became so bad that the vet advised them to keep the pets out of Mary's room. In total, they lost 1 canary, 2 finches, a dog, 3 guinea pigs, and a raccoon. They never had an issue with keeping pets before, and all their pets had always died of old age. The family started having other strange happenings. Clara's book is basically a diary that documents her experiences. Diving into every experience that this family had would take hours, if not days. So here are a few highlights of things that happened. Furry animals would jump on the children at night. The whereabouts of the pets were known, so this was something else. When swatted away, the animals never hit the floor, they just disappeared. In the morning, a strange greenish excrement could be found. More than one time, the children would wake up to tear-shaped burns on their skin. There were also poltergeist activities. A letter opener was found in Mary's picture hanging on the wall. One night, while Mike slept, games on the shelf above him were scattered about the room. Mike was very skeptical about the activities up until this point. Audible events also happened in the area. There were often sounds of people moving downstairs. Furniture could be heard moving in rooms that were empty. One day, while Clara was alone by herself at home, she heard what sounded like a pile of newspapers fall on the porch. She investigated, but found that the newspapers were still stacked where they had been. She went back in to start reading again and heard what sounded like a window slamming shut. She had opened all the windows that day to let the warm spring air in, so she walked around expecting to find one shut because the sash cords in the house were all broken, but found that they were still all open. Another thing that has been heard when walking in the woods above the house is the sound of chanting or singing. Many different apparitions have been seen as well. When they first moved in, the children reported seeing a dark man walking down the road. He would walk behind a tree and disappear. His appearance was different depending on who saw him. When asked for clarification, it seemed that the figure was not a dark-skinned man, but a dark figure. Others said he was dressed as a farmer. There were other times that multiple people saw a young boy walking along the pond beside the house. He would also disappear. It was thought that at one point he fell in a hole, but when they went to look, there was no hole and no child to be found. In July of 1973, Clara reached out to a family member who was a priest. His name was Father Bob. They met with Father Bob at a family reunion on July 8th. Clara explained what was happening and asked if he could help them. In another quote from her book, here is what she relayed. He listened sympathetically to my story and promised to come to the house as soon as possible. He confessed he might not be able to help and thought that I might have to get in touch with someone who does that sort of thing. I guess medicine isn't the only field with areas of specialization, end quote. Father Bob came to the house on July 10th, 1973. He blessed the house and discussed the events again. He suggested that they be in touch with Father Alphonsus at St. Bonaventure University. He studied psychic phenomena and helped people in cases like this. She put in a call to the university and awaited a response. When he left, Father Bob said, "I don't know if I did you any good, but I didn't do you any harm." It was after this experience that they started seeing another apparition. This was a woman who they first saw dancing by the lake. Mary and Susan had seen her, but when they went to investigate, found nothing. Now I want to note here that many of the things that happened seemed to rotate around Mary in her bedroom. It was at this point that they reached out to Father Alphonsus again. When he finally contacted them, he promised to be out as soon as possible. Father Al, as she called him, and a friend, Father Dermot, arrived on July 29th. They listened to the story. Father Dermot insisted on blessing the house and the family again and said prayers for protection. Father Al had no explanation for the new sighting, but said they wouldn't see it again, if only that were true. The woman made several other appearances, even to Clara's mother. Things continued to get worse for the family. There was an umbrella of tension, as they called it, that came over the house on certain nights. Things would disappear and show up in other places. Psychics would tell stories of people that attacked in the house years earlier. In August of 1973, the Olean newspaper had a reporter reach out to the family to do a story. Expecting that it would be a back-page filler story, they agreed to talk to the reporter. They hoped that maybe they would be able to find out some history about the property and happenings there. On August 17th, the article was published. The picture and the article filled half of the front page and most of page 3. This started another problem. People started to come see the house and hoping to spot a ghost. This went on for a long time. People were chased away, but they kept coming back. Even Father Alphonsus helped out. He would use a car with a rotating dome light on top and act as the family security guard. After burning a blessed candle in Mary's room, the activity seemed to move to Beth's room, which was directly underneath it. Smells of rotting carrion emanated from her room. Noises came from under the bed. One day, all the alarm clocks in the house went off at 7 a.m., even one that hadn't worked for a long time. Things did not get any better. On August 29th, 1973, Father Al came out to visit again. This time he said Mass on the kitchen table. After that, he said a simple exorcism and carried that host around the house and grounds. Clara noted that she was a lifelong Catholic, but the ceremony gave her chills. I also want to note here that this was called out as a simple exorcism. Nicholas in his article states that a full exorcism was never done on the property, and that would be the type that would drive a demon from a person. Now, this point has been debated many times, so I'm not exactly sure what the truth is on this one. On September 3rd, 1973, many things happened. The thing that I find most interesting is after several other things happened, Phil checked the attic crawl space after hearing a noise. He looked in and found that the chimney had been taken apart and neatly stacked by the wall. This invoked another call to Father Al. He came out to investigate, and as usual, he didn't see anything. This was Labor Day, and from then on, it was known as the day all hell broke loose. On September 19th, a lecture was being given at the university by Alex T., a noted psychic. Arrangements were made for him to visit after the lecture. He said his impression was that there had been a mass murder at the house. He saw 7 spirits of those who had been killed. 1 man was stabbed, 1 woman hanged, another drowned, a man was beaten to death, and a young girl about 18 years old with strawberry blonde hair was attacked, tortured, and beaten to death. The others he sensed, but he couldn't identify. He had not been briefed on any of the things that happened, but described a lot of what the family had seen over the years. Clara felt like the puzzle had just come together. He said this was from about 100 years earlier. He also sensed another spirit. She was a woman who was about 90 years old. He described a former resident that had died in the house. Over the next few weeks, Alex helped them find peace in the house. It was after this that Michael, the son, was in a bad car accident. He had been investigating things that Alex had told him and swerved the car off the road. He was in serious condition and was transported to the hospital in Buffalo. On November 3rd, Michael was released from the hospital. On November 25th, one of Mike's friends was in a car accident after leaving the house. Now, this was another common occurrence. Many times after leaving the house, people were in bad car accidents. The story of things like this keeps going on and on. On October 17th, 1974, Phil and Claire left the house for the last time. They had enough. They couldn't sell the house, but there was interest in people staying there for the experience. Apparently, over the years, a few families owned the house, but they didn't stay there for long. In June of 2015, the Hinsdale House became available for purchase. Daniel Klaus had wanted to own the house for a long time, and he purchased it. He immediately began restorations. He opened it up for paranormal investigations and has been featured on many TV shows. As an interesting note, according to his book, Daniel has no desire to live there. And this is where JOTT-NYX Paranormal is headed next week, or this weekend. So that's what I've got, guys.
Well,
Well, it's suffice us to say, this isn't our first trip there.
Yep.
This is one of the opportunities we've had to revisit a place. We visited here almost exactly 2 years ago, to the day, and we had an investigation out there that night, and got into the Olean area, and I have to stress the pronunciation. It's Olean, not Olean. I almost got jumped in a sub shop for mispronouncing the name. It was one of those "you ain't from around here" type deals.
Yep.
But it was a really unique experience the first time.
Uh-huh.
We're hoping to get we're hoping to get more activity this time, because like everything else, you can't ever guarantee activity when you go to a place. So, and Jamie and I were part of the group that went that first time.
Yep. Yeah, it's curious because the stories, the conflicting stories that you expressed early on are prevalent. It's anytime you start looking at the place, you hear these things. And the one that always stuck out to me was the stagecoach stop. And the story goes that the men who lived at the house at the time, and I'm drawing a blank on the names, pardon me for that, but they would approach the stop and look for what they would consider marks, easy marks, and that they would offer shelter and a meal to those individuals back to their house, which allegedly wasn't far away, and therefore once they were there, they attacked or killed them, and that was how they made their living. It was basically this robbing and pillaging kind of thing, and murder. True or not, it's being there. From the story side of it, it sounds like it's plausible, right? But being there and seeing just how far off the beaten trail it really is. I mean, it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere. There are roads and there are other developed homes nearby. But back in the stagecoach time, I can't see a stagecoach coming anywhere near this place. That wouldn't have been a ride to get to from where the roads are. Because we build modern roads on old roads, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's something close by that it would have been convenient for a stagecoach to go through. So I don't see it, but it's a fantastic story. And it leads to the mystique of the place and maybe the aura, why people wanted to be there and see it. That evening, this is proof to that people want to come by and see the house. We're there. It's probably 2 a.m. or so, and we're in the process of investigating. So the house is dark, and a car pulls up, and it's the house is at the end of a long lane, so you can see a car coming, and it was quite off-putting to have somebody approach who weren't supposed to be there. By the fact that we were supposed to be there, they don't know we're there either. So, with I think a quick conversation, they went on their way and we remained. But how many times that happens on a daily or weekly basis is probably a lot. Because of it's that place, and it's vacant, so anybody who knows that they can at least wander around it a little bit, maybe not get inside, but it's quite interesting that way. And it has, it has neighbors, so there are people within reason of the place, and they could be out, in their yard making noise and doing their thing. There's a house at the top of the hill, beyond the tree, another 100 yards or so up the hill. And the picture we have of the house, showing the pond, there's basically on the other side of the pond, like a hedgerow, European hedgerow concept. And on the other side of that, there's another property. And then up the hill to the right, there's, through a long, and there's very meticulously planted pine trees there. So they're all in rows, and you can look down the row and see a house, plain as day. It's another 100 yards or 150 yards away. So it's not in the middle of nowhere. There are people, and, when people make noises and you don't expect it, you think something's happening, without knowing the surroundings. So I went out and walked the area before it got too dark to see exactly what was around us, so we would know if there was some kind of contamination, pollution.
Right.
And as Tim commented on this already, we had we saged a bit before we started, just to protect ourselves and the usual stuff that we do. And of course we had a lot of, and there's a fire pit right out back off the back porch. So what to do with the sage, and our teammate Matt offered the thought of putting it in the fire, and we did. And we might have saged the whole county for all we know. So much came out of that, which might have led to some of the lack of activity that we had that night. We didn't have it was not a bustling thing, and this is like everything, right, guys? We go to a place, and it doesn't matter if we're at Booby's Brewery, which we are at regularly, or we're at a place we've never been before, like the Hinsdale at this time. It's not an on-demand thing. So we didn't have a lot of captured or documented things, but we had some anecdotal things happen. So the running joke has ever been since then: don't sow the sage in the fire, just in case. So, but it was an interesting night overall, because it is enough of a rural place that you don't have a lot of pollution other than those proximity neighbors. It was a fair night, and it wasn't like really cold out or anything, so we got to get out and explore the property too.
Okay. So it sounds to me like it's not just the house that's haunted, but it's actually could be the property, and even some of the property surround, like some of the I guess there's some steps that go up to what used to be a campground.
Yeah, right off the back, walking out, you walk straight. There's the hill, as you mentioned, and that would have been like a great lookout spot because it's the elevation. But there are cut-in steps with railroad ties or something like that go up, and then it kind of just is the hillside. But there is there's a tree that has been ornamented with offerings that were left behind by others, that has some claim to spiritualism for the land, that is a good 30-40 yards up the hill, that is set aside by itself. It's not a clearing. There's no clearing in that area, so the tree is there, and it's been the ground around it's been cleared a bit, but there are still mature trees all around it. So I can't speak to a campground, unless at the time it would have been the house space all the way at the top of the hill, which is again a house now, and the grass yard and all that stuff. Right. There's a couple houses up there actually on that. The road that you pull off of to get to the house continues past these homes as well.
Okay, because that's where they talked about the chanting coming from, is sort of up the hill.
Yeah. And again, if somebody had a radio playing, like on the back porch, that might be what we're hearing as a beat kind of thing. And who knows? I'm not discrediting the chanting by any means, but certainly plausible, but there is just the possibility that it's also just natural noise people are making.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, am I keeping you up? What do you got there?
No, I don't know what happened all of a sudden. I just started wanting to yawn.
I know my story was a little dry tonight, Dave. Sorry.
No, I don't know. All of a sudden, I just wanted to start yawning. No, out straight out the back is the path up into the woods to the offering tree, and like Jamie said, and then offset to, if you're looking at the house, offset to the left is a pond. which has a lot of activity. Building on what you said, Chad, there's a lot of times it's been reported that the outside is more active than the inside. And, I don't know if that was, I don't recall if that was the case for us, because we didn't have a whole lot of activity on the inside. I can remember some specific things. For example, when I was in the kitchen, and I want to stress this, that compared to other places we've been even recently, versus like the Clifton Theater or obviously Crescent Sanitarium and prison, even the private that we did in Liverpool, Pennsylvania. This house is effectively like a shoebox. Everything's on top of everybody's on top of everybody else in this house. I mean, you go in and you walk, if I remember correctly, you walk directly into the living room, and the living room has been modified a little bit because there's a little alcove now where they have the doll collection. And that was one of the girls' rooms downstairs. And then when you go down, or when you go into the kitchen, then Mike's room was right off the kitchen, and it still has the original shelves and everything in it. And there, I have a picture of I have a picture of myself sleeping in that bed where he had all the stuff dropped on top of him. And then the off of the kitchen is like directly out of the kitchen is the stairs upstairs with the crawl space right above you. So as you're coming up the stairs, the crawl space is above the archway to the doorway you walked in, and that's where it is right there. Then you get to the top of the stairs, and there's no hallway or anything. It's just a landing at the top of the stairs. To the right is Mary's room. To the left was the parents' room, and then there's a closet off the parents' room. That's literally it for this house. Yeah. And so some of the activity that we got was on the stairs. The REM pod, I was in the kitchen, and the REM pod went off on the stairs. We got some spirit box activity in the living room when we were all congregated in the living room. And I believe we even live streamed. If you go back, you might be able to find it on our JOTT-NYX page. I don't know how long they stay up there, but I know we live streamed for 30 or so minutes from there. Mm-hmm. But outside the pond, if I remember the history parts of the history that I've researched, I think the pond is an artificial pond. Oh, I mean, it's obviously a real pond, but it wasn't there to begin with. I think that's where the barn was, and the barn was brought down to make room to dig out the pond, and then there I am sleeping in Mike's bed. But the one of the stories that Clara Dandy tells is the fact that when they first got there, the dogs were bringing in bones that were larger than regular old animal bones that you would find in the area, except for maybe deer. And she was throwing them out. She thought they were animal bones. She was throwing them out. And, it's believed that there was a cemetery on the property that was disturbed and moved to put the pond in. And when you're there, I don't know if they're still there. 2 years ago, they were there. When we went, they had the little surveyor flags, flags out where they had identified burial spots for people. So I don't, and that's right next to the pond, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there was a LiDAR scan not too long before we got there that left those marks, those shallow points as targets, anomaly targets. That's why the flags were still there if they weren't able to be explored yet.
Right.
It'll be
but you're right. It is out. It's out. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I made the mistake last time. I want to talk about vehicle issues. I made the mistake last time of thinking I could drive home by myself after we got done the investigation. We cut the investigation at like 2 or 2:30, and I drove home. And I don't know how my GPS brought me home, but I'm going to tell you without exaggeration, it was well after sunrise until I was driving along a river in this fog, and it was well after sunrise until I found another town, like until I rolled into another town. I thought I was in some, like, I thought I may have fallen asleep and driven into the river, and I was just stuck in some hellish purgatory of driving, forever. But
Well,
that was the weird experience for me there.
even the you suggested a podcast or a YouTube video for us to watch, and the woman who did that video also said that she had some weird car issues, and she ended up getting a speeding ticket. And she's normally one of those people who goes well below the speed limit, like just weird things that tag along. So.
Well, to Dave's point, I left as well afterwards, and Matt and I drove up that afternoon, and then we drove back that night. So it's 4 hours for us both ways. And as we left, this was happening while we were there. There was a fog rolling in, just to the late August and mid Western New York. It's kind of what happens. But the main highway, which is like the New York whatever the extension of the New York Expressway is, was freshly paved and had no lines on it yet. And that fog was so thick that you couldn't see the edge of the road. So I really had no idea where I was on the road itself, and it went on for hours. The sun had come up, and it was still very dense. And I don't think we got out until we got out of New York. We were starting to get to a place where there was visibility. And I know at one point, it's so thick we can't see where I'm really driving very slow, like just trying not to wreck or run off the road because there are no lines, and there's no guardrails, anything. And it's just mountains, as we're moving back to the east. And at one point, a car came flying up behind us, and by flying, it's probably doing 50, but it just flew right by us. And I'm like, I remember saying to Matt, like, how does he know where he's going? It's like, you can't see the road. And it was just that weird thing. And it was probably sometime around in Williamsport coming back into Pennsylvania till it finally broke, and the sun was burned off the fog and everything, that we had a normal drive the rest of the way. That was a rough one. I agree with you, really rough drive home, especially being there all night.
So Matt was actually awake at that point?
Oh no, Matt fell asleep the whole time. And this is the fun part of the driving with somebody else. He was, as he nodded off, I would just turn on my seat warmer on his side, and he would wake up and like turn it off, and then he would fall back asleep. I would turn it back on again, the whole way. So every 30, 40 minutes he'd wake up with a warm butt. So stuff you do.
Uh-huh.
All in fun.
So David,
well, we're hoping to have a good time up here this time.
I agree. I think we have more technology and more instruments and equipment now than we did then. One of the cool things that this was a first for me in an investigation, and I'm glad Tim's on this with us. It was the first time I got to see a Tesla coil in use, and he brought two of them, and they were sitting side by side in the living room, with one spinning. And there's a video of this. I don't know if we have an opportunity to show it or not, but one is spinning fairly fast or quickly, and the other one to the right of it is slower. And in my understanding of these should be as active item with the ionization of the air they're using, they should be running at basically the same pace. I know we commented on it at the time how it was a bit unusual, but also in the video that I have, there is a moment where the camera tries to autofocus on something that's not moving in front of the area where these are sitting in the living room. And I do recall vividly, this is an anecdotal thing that unfortunately wasn't on the video, but there was, as I'm sitting there straight looking into the kitchen, there's a shadow moving around the area where the stove is. And it was just kind of moving left and right, bobbing back and forth for quite a while. As I get up, of course, to go physically look at it and go into that space, nothing's happening then. Mm-hmm. So, it again, not a whole lot of stuff captured, but there were certainly some active moments throughout the night.
So. I do have that video, Jamie. I can play a little bit. It's about 2 minutes, but we'll just
the first. I think the first 30 seconds or so, 45 seconds is probably all we need.
Okay, I'll go ahead and run it here.
You want to play with the little cat ball on the floor? You can touch that and make it light up.
Should get theirs for one of those.
Maybe we should put the cat ball on the table. They seem to like the K2.
SLS out and see.
How do you see? Doesn't really trigger that green spot. It doesn't really trigger the dull spot in between them. You know what I mean?
You can see the one on the right's not moving in the same rotation pace as the one on the left. And that is a tripod camera, so I'm not holding it. So, you know, the autofocus that happens early on, yeah, there's some commenting on it now. It was a very unique experience. So they were identical with the same power, and they both appeared to run at the same speed to start. Then the one just started slowing down, like power was draining from it. So,
Okay.
yeah, thanks, Tim. That was really cool. You know, I've seen Tesla coils in other applications. You know, we had actually Daniel Clays brought one down to the Haldeman one time when right around the Gettysburg Bash, he was in the area, stopped in, and he had a very large one that night, and it was, you know, the full focal, the rotation was constant throughout the use of that one. It was really neat to see that pace change.
Okay.
And it does seem like something was, you know, perhaps in that corner draining more of the energy or power from it.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea of a Tesla coil, right? Is to provide power or energy to something there to use it. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So, David, is there anything you're looking forward to digging into while we're there this time? Is there anything you want to explore?
I want to spend some more time in Mary's room. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time upstairs when I was there last time. I didn't really get much in the cellar last time. The cellar, again, it's one of those old houses, which is a lot like the Conjuring house when Jamie and I went, where it's you're in the basement and you're a part of the conversation upstairs.
Right.
You know, so, and I sat down there about a good half hour or so by myself, to, and I got absolutely nothing. But again, and I think Missy had some stuff going on with Lizzie and one of the dolls when we were there. So I'm kind of interested to see what else we do. And like Jamie said, we are a lot more technologically heavy now versus the first time we were there. So I'm interested to see the readings on some of the stuff that we'll get.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll have the tripwires, which I know is one of your new favorite instruments. So we'll see what we get with that.
There's always a flashlight. Keeping it old school.
I love the tripwire.
Jamie, did you know that David now has?
I'll have my flashlight. I don't take it out of the car now.
David now has a voice recorder.
I now have a what?
Voice recorder.
I do.
An EV. You have an EV.
Oh, slow down there, buddy. Slow your roll. You're getting ahead.
Man, I got my own EVP now.
Your EVP recorder. Perfect. Yeah. Good times.
So I saw Tim responded again. What did he have to say?
I think it was just about the Tesla coil. And
oh yeah, that's right. We were having problems with our batteries.
Yeah.
You were? Or were...
Yep.
Okay.
There was a drain. There was the consistent
we
drain
were.
in the house as well.
Okay.
Of other things that were running. My battery and my camera died way earlier than it should have that night too.
Interesting.
You know, you start to, you know, we've been at this long enough, right? So you start to see these things happening, and you know what we know in the field is these are indicators that, you know, activity may be happening or may happen, and you know we still didn't find, you know, the opportunities to be captured enough to say, you know, to say definitely, you know, stuff was going on that night. You know, it was just enough to be around us, but not enough to be engaged with our practice and process. And that's, you know, that's so not unusual, right? Because that's like every time we go to a new place, they don't know us, you know, but there's enough folks who come through this property and they are booked for, a year at a time, out a year at a time, and so, I'm assuming that the spirits who may be there are familiar with technologies and equipment and so forth.
Right.
But it's also selectivism, whether they want to or not. It's always the case. It's much like if, you don't want to hang out with somebody, you can avoid them, and we can't maybe do it as easily because we can be seen. But, it's one of those things where it's just, it wasn't our night. And that's okay, right? Because it happens. But it was interesting though that things were being drawn down and other areas where that's normal predicators for activity. So maybe they were saving that energy and storing it for another time, or it was happening elsewhere and we just didn't capture it.
Jamie, do you have any suggestions or areas that you want me to throw one of the cameras to see if we catch anything?
Ooh, yeah. So I think for me there are well, two things. One, there are already cameras in the house. There's a live feed running all the time, and we're going to be on in our window. We're going to be on their feed, so you have that advantage. So kind of look around for those. And I don't recall where they all are, but the living room seems to be a place. The if you can, we do one outside, kind of thing, like right by the side door into that kind of patio space where the fire pit is, aiming toward the steps up. That might be something. There was wildlife there. When we were there was 4, 5, 6 deer who drifted into the yard, and of course we come outside and look around with flashlights, and there's deer. Like, holy shit, wow. And there's a raccoon running around somewhere too. On the property.
Or is it their old raccoon? Maybe it's their old raccoon.
It might be. I thought of that when you said that they lost one. Maybe, but that something outside would be helpful because we didn't really do anything there before. And I think the kitchen is like the hub of the house. It's what you walk into from either the front door or the side door. Front door, you come through the porch, the front porch area. That's the closure. So that would have been the crossing of everybody at all times when they came there. And then, and Tim said the room to the right on the second floor. We had our former team member Mallory had a really interesting picture happen. And David mentioned the crawl spaces behind you when you come up the steps. It has a glass door on it now. I'm sure it wasn't there then. She took a picture there, facing it. Her reflection showed a hand, what looked like a hand anyway, at her neck or chest area, close enough to be menacing. And it wasn't like a normal hand. It was more bony or thinner fingers, so it was really unique. So something in that area as well, if possible. But and we had REM pod activity on the stairs. So, that same kind of thing. That's like it's not a visual place because it's awkward. But, if you have all 4 cameras that we normally would have, I think you can.
Well, and somebody... Have you seen the pencil drawing one of the friends of the group did when he was at Hinsdale last, of the young girl on the stairs?
Yes.
I think Missy may have shared it this week.
Yep, seen it.
And there's a lot of belief that, because 2 of the kids are dead now. Mike died. I believe, if I remember correctly, he died. I think he may have died of an aneurysm or something, but they think it started around the time of his accident that he had when he was living in the house. And then I believe it was the youngest. She succumbed to her demons, and it's always been felt that she went back. She always wanted to go back to the house. She always wanted to return to the house. And they moved. You want to talk about moving as far away as humanly possible? They moved to California. And I think Clara now lives in Portland, Oregon.
Yep. Yeah. I was reading that a little bit before the show. The youngest daughter, they said she did always want to go back there, and she at one point in her life said that she wasn't going to live to be very old, and I think she was in her 30s when things happened. So
right, and it's very likely that she may be back there, and that's what kind of gave me chills. Oh, and I want to make sure I credit the young lady who did the 2.5-hour YouTube spots on the Hinsdale house. Her name was Stephanie Harlow. and they're only about 2 years old, so they're pretty recent, and they're very easily searchable on YouTube. So I want to make sure she gets the credit that she deserves.
Yeah, her handle's Harloween. So yeah, they were.
Yeah,
They were
I
very,
mean, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Hopefully, we'll have another nice gourmet dinner prior to going, and
So as always, we want to definitely give credit to the Hinsdale House. Throw them some information. They're always looking for money to help restorations. You can book an investigation. You can book tours. It's the hauntedhinsdalehouse.com. So, check it out, see what's on their website, and hopefully you can find the live stream there, Jamie. Is that where that would be?
I think so. It's been a while, so it's been like 2 years. So bear with me.
Okay.
But I know we were. It was shared with us as the team who were there, and it was available for a certain amount of time. So I'm not sure it's totally public or not.
Oh, okay.
But we were able to go back and review it for our own evidence review.
Okay.
In the time we were there, since it was permanent cameras that were running, even if we weren't in spaces.
Very cool. So, and then we are making a weekend of this. So we're going to be at the Hinsdale House on Friday night, and then on Saturday night we're going to travel a little bit down the road and go to Wildwood Sanatorium.
About 30 minutes.
Yep. I haven't done much research on that one yet. I'm going to do a tour on Saturday. And then we'll actually do the history of that next Tuesday, and then we'll share that after we go. But I'm looking forward to that one too. It should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because Daniel Clays owns both properties, so it is kind of a packageable thing, to go do both with one option to with one reservation kind of thing. So
right.
Kudos to Dan and his partners, if he has them, to preserve and keep a place like Hinsdale too, but also the sanatorium as well. So it's got a little bit of a reputation that precedes it, and we'll get into that next week. Not to spoil or give away anything, but it's also a really cool property. And when you're in the neighborhood, you might as well do both. So
right.
I'm glad you guys. And I apologize, I can't make this trip. I'm so jealous that you're getting to Wildwood. And back to Hinsdale for that matter. It's a cool place. I wish I could make it, but have fun for me.
Listen, you not making this trip is totally on you. I have an adult baby Bjorn. I would carry you through.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you would also need a back brace because this boy ain't light. For those who don't know, I broke my foot, and I'm challenged at times to move around. But these old places with very narrow stairs at Hinsdale and very a lot of walking. Doctor's orders. I'm off duty for at least a couple weeks yet. Probably in the early September anyway. So guys, have fun for me. I really mean it, and
we will.
Lots and lots of pictures.
So.
Yeah, and, we usually say it at this point too, haunted or not haunted, so, what do we think? And I'll give it a thumbs up for haunted, even though our night was not as active as others have had there. I think we saw enough, we felt enough, in the experience we were there. I think it is. I think it's got activity anyway, whether it, it's as advertised, sometimes probably not, because no place really ever is. But I think we really had, we have something there, again, like to get back someday at least. But Dave, what do you think? Being then, you haven't been there, done that.
I lean toward the haunted portion, the haunted opinion. Again, just because we didn't get anything, I mean, we probably played a hand in it, and we were, I mean, at the time, you got to understand that, like, for example, me, if you remember, that's 2 years ago, I was on the team for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I really, that was my first offsite. That was my first, I really didn't know, how things have changed over the last 2 years, but I didn't really know what to do or what was expected. And, so, yeah, I lean toward haunted. I lean toward us being a more polished investigative group at this point. So, if we aren't getting something at some point, we have the ability to pivot now and, try different things and go different avenues and routes and maybe, get some activity. So I'm excited. I am really excited. I'm excited for the weekend. It's been quite the. I'm in the middle of a really long travel stint, in my, just in general. And it was Connecticut last week, and I'm on the other side of New York State this week. So, really, really looking forward to it.
And I mean, I'm going to lean towards.
What about you, Chad?
What's that? I'm going to lean towards Haunted. Just the stories. There's some of the stories I sort of question. They're the skeptic in me says, well, it could have been this, could have been that. But then there's some things like, how does a brick chimney get disassembled and stacked like that? Just like what causes that? Like,
Yeah.
So I'm going to lean towards Haunted, and hopefully we'll see that, see the proof of that this weekend. When you guys went to Hinsdale last time, I had not even done my first investigation with the team. It was shortly after that actually, Jamie, you gifted me for my 50th birthday an investigation, and it's all your fault.
Yeah, look what happened with that. Jeez. So
So shortly after that trip, I started hanging out with the team and have enjoyed it ever since. So.
Yeah. Here you go. You finally get there. So
yep. So
like I say, guys, I'm excited for you both, and safe travels, and go get it.
Yep. All right. So we're hitting our time. So Jamie, do you want to go through?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, we're off site this weekend, so there's nothing going on at Boobies. With the Hinsdale and Wildwood Sanatorium, we're back at the brewery on the 19th. There are tickets still available. Saver Stub, link below, will get you to us and get you through the paranormal experience at Boobies Brewery. All 3 floors and a couple hours worth of time with the team. We'll teach you how to do it, let you use equipment, and have fun with it. Shortly after, we're back on the road again. We're heading to New Jersey once more, back over to Red Mill Museum Village. This one is a big one for us. It's us, JOTT-NYX New Jersey, and a couple guest investigators. You might have heard of Daryl Marston, but also Chris Mendence and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I'm seeing their faces.
Ron and Lourdes.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. Pardon me. So this is a long evening and into the night. We're going to take a little bit of a break in the midst of it and have a bonfire with telling some ghost stories, doing some s'mores and some fun stuff with it. But the Red Mill it's a restoration project, like many of these old properties are, and help us help them by having the ticket. It is a limited engagement event, so there are still some tickets left, but not many. So if at all interested, that is the September 2nd. And it's right around the corner at this point. So sadly, I'm not going to make this one as well. Doctor's orders, but you guys go rock it. Have fun.
And I want to shout out again to Ron and Lourdes. They are demonstrating a new technology that they've developed with it's called Staticom, and it's really interesting. They use a white noise and slow down the speed of it, and to listen to what's there, and it'll be very interesting to see what we come up with that night.
Oh, cool.
I'm lucky enough to be assigned with them the whole night, so I'm hoping to learn some things that not that we'll be able to bring it back to the team yet, but hopefully soon. So
Awesome.
So let's see, and then
so next week we're gonna go review in advance of Wildwood Sanatorium, and then the hope and goal is on the 22nd to get the team together who is going this weekend with you two and Jerry and Missy together for a kind of a reveal, much like we did with Whitehill a week ago or so. So have some time at this point to review the evidence that we capture, because 2 nights in a row is a lot of stuff to go through. So guys, obviously, no pressure, but pressure to get get all that audio and video reviewed, and come through with some stuff to discuss. At least, if worst case it's anecdotal, but that's kind of a cool thing to be able to go back on it and share the experience with everyone in our massive fan base. So
I believe Chris Mendez is with us as well. So
good.
Hopefully we can get him on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say Chris is with us.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, he's fantastic. So, the usual social media stuff. Obviously, you found us on Facebook, but we're also on TikTok. There's some cool content there, Instagram, and of course, always YouTube for videos and content there. So, drop in, give us a like, give us a follow, and we'll keep you up to speed of what we're up to or around and about in all our travels and adventure.
All right. I think that about wraps it up for the night, guys.
All right.
So,
well, thanks for watching, Dave. It's great to see you. Hopefully, catch you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. That you're always welcome. You know that. Come on by.
So, all right. Well, we're gonna roll the end credits, and we'll see everybody next week.
All right.
Night.